I really don't even know how to quickly sum up the conversation that you're about to listen to because it is that good. It is full of so many lessons and just tidbits that I think you're going to find really valuable. So you're going to enjoy this conversation with Sarah Hart of Simply Curated. We talked about her experience in the very early days of when social media was just becoming a thing and how that led her to create Simply Curated and the evolution of that brand that she now has to now her last 4 months or so when she has gone completely viral and blown up on her personal account. And she's now a content creator and everything in between, the challenges she's faced, the lessons she's learned, and really what that through line of your different experiences and the things that happen that don't quite make sense, or you're not sure if you're going to ever need that again, how it all kind of comes full circle. And her story isn't done. She has so many chapters ahead of her. And it just was such a refreshing take on the reality of business and the importance of kind of staying true to yourself and really listening to your customers and what that data is telling you, right? So it's a really great conversation. I hope that you enjoy the chat. Let's get into it. Hey friend, quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck with how to get your brand to stand out on Faire? I'm asking you because as a buyer myself, I can tell you that there are just so many brands out there vying for the attention of these buyers, but I know that your brand has something so special and it needs to be seen. I put together a private podcast for you that goes deeper into what buyers are really looking for on the Faire platform and how you can stand out from the crowd to grow your wholesale business and really land those dream buyers. So if this resonates with you, head to the link in the show notes for instant access. Sarah, I'm so excited to have you on. This is like, I feel like a long time coming. And so I'm really honored to have you here today on the Buyer Side Chat.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. I'm so excited. I feel like it's been forever since I did any kind of podcast. So I'm very excited to talk to you today.
I know you have such a good podcast voice too. And I know you used to have a podcast. So it's like you're going back back into the old days.
Yeah. People still ask me about that podcast all the time.
Well, you can like play around with it today, feeling like you're back in it. So tell us a little bit about like your backstory, because you have a really interesting story. You've been in business for 12 years. I mean, that's really incredible. And so I know there's a lot that's baked into that, but like kind of the overview sounds great.
I think one of the bigger things that happened to me was like, I would have graduated college in 2009. And towards the end, it was very clear that I wasn't going to graduate in 4 years. I didn't have all of the things that were required, even though I had more than enough like credits hours. I just didn't have the right credits hours because I thought that college was supposed to be about taking classes and things that you wanted to learn, which is what I did. But apparently that's not how it works. And tech was really kind of just like starting to come up. Social media was really starting to come up. I worked for Apple right before I worked at the Apple store the year before the iPhone was launched. So it had been announced, but it had not been launched yet. And at that time, Twitter had come out. I was telling all my friends to get on Twitter and they had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. And I started a blog, actually a video blog at that time called randomsarah.com, which does not exist anywhere on the internet anymore. Do not go looking for that.
As I'm like immediately like,
no, I'm pretty sure I did a pretty good job of wiping that. But I was like explaining to people what, just like I was talking about tech things in my everyday life because I was just really involved in and really interested in technology and social media and computers. And this was all so new. And I remember I had a defining moment when I was in college because I was a double major in photography. And our school had this weird major called media studies, which is a weird like half communications major, half like film studies. It was neither a good version of either one of those. But I was in a like a film producing course or something where we had to write like a spec for a movie, and you had to come out with a whole, like, here's your idea. Also, here's how you're pitching it. Here's where you think you're going to get funding. And then here's how you are planning to distribute the movie. What's your distribution plan? At the time, I was working at the Apple Store. I knew that there had been one movie that had just come out. It's a big deal. It was released exclusively on iTunes. And I thought this was so smart, and they could do all of this marketing around it. And this was a digital distribution of this film. This is 2009, okay? My professor gave me an incomplete on this project because she said that my distribution choice was not a valid means of distribution for a film. Like this wasn't one of the options that I gave you A, B, or C, and you picked X or, D, other. And I was like, you're so wrong. And I just had this realization that it was going to take the education years to catch up to what was a very, very new industry. And that I just needed to go do this professionally. I was already going to South by Southwest for my podcast. I was doing interviews. I was already working in social media for myself at the time. I was basically a content creator before that was a word that even existed. And in 2009, after the summer, I decided to not go back to school, moved to Philadelphia, and I got a job working social media for Comcast. My first couple weeks on the job was right during the Comcast NBC Universal merger. I had my first big corporate job. I was doing social media for Comcast Sports, okay, from their Twitter account. I was running their Twitter account and their Facebook page. They wanted me to, just to give you a picture of how much people didn't understand social media back then. They wanted me to give them, in an Excel sheet, my next 2 weeks worth of tweets. And I said, this is a sports account.
That's not how that works.
This hasn't even happened. So it was just trying to explain to people who had absolutely no idea. But then I was laid off within 6 months just due to a restructuring of my first corporate merger. First in, last in, first out, right? Yep. I had this great job and was working with the team. This was before Comcast had even launched Xfinity. I was in early meetings where they were discussing even the branding of the word Xfinity. It was such a weird thing. But I lived in Philly for 6 months, and my parents unceremoniously, after I got fired from this job, drove down from New York, picked me up, packed up everything, and were like, no, you're coming back home. This was a mistake. You should never have dropped out of college. And I was like, again, you're wrong. But okay, fine. I agreed to go back to school part-time, but I very quickly got a job at a startup. This startup was a social media management platform for small brick and mortar businesses. Again, brick and mortar businesses didn't even know, this was 2010 now.
Yeah.
They didn't even know they needed social media. They just kept cheering about it, and they just, but this was an aggregate platform. It was so before its time. It's called Postling. And so they were in a tech aggregator, for startups. So they had a small team. They had a little bit of money. They hired me to do as their community manager. So I was supposed to do outreach to all of these brick and mortar businesses. But I thought that a community manager was more of an online role. You're managing the online community, but they didn't have an online community yet. And they didn't have users. So what they wanted me to do was actually plan in-person events in and around New York City for small brick and mortar businesses. But I said, that's not what I know how to do. I am not an event planner. And then they hired an event planner or somebody to help me. We were kind of in the same role. It was very confusing. The person that they hired, her name is Jen Rubio. She's the CEO of Away. So we had the same job for a minute, and then they fired me. But it was my first time getting laid off. It was really devastating. I was very social media at that time, and the tech scene in New York City, Tumblr was really big. It was a really small community. We all went to the same networking events. We all were friends. We all hung out and did all that stuff. It was a very exciting time to be a part of that. But I was 22.
Yeah.
And I just had never been laid off from a job in that way that was somewhat related to my performance. But I was just really frustrated in that I didn't do bad at my job. You just totally, completely changed my role.
Yeah.
But it was my first time really feeling okay, this hurts and I don't like it and I don't want to do that again. But I also felt like I couldn't show my face in like the startup scene. And I was so frustrated with these tech bros who would raise $1 million and burn through it in a year and call it a good learning experience. Mm-hmm. I was infuriated with that whole industry. And I had people who were friends of mine saying that I needed to start my own thing, but I had no ideas. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do as far as like tech was related. And I didn't think I wanted to start a tech business. So I had a good friend who was hiring interns at AOL. And he said, look, I want you to come work for me. I know you haven't finished school yet. And that's a requirement if I was to hire you, just as a member of my staff, but I can hire you as an intern, and bring you in as a consultant. So I got hired as an intern at AOL. And my first day on the job was the AOL Huffington Post merger announcement day. And I was like, I have trauma from this. Why does corporate America hate me? And why does this keep happening? I literally walked into a meeting and Ariana Huffington is standing right over there in the AOL offices. And I'm just like, is this real life? Like, I didn't know what it meant, but my new boss / friend didn't know what it meant either. And he was just like, here we are. I don't know if all my bosses are going to laid off. I don't know what's going to happen. So it was very interesting. I was there for about 2 years on and off. The first year as an intern, the second year as a consultant. So I was getting paid, I was 1099. And the consulting year, I was also a consultant, a social media consultant for the Billboard Music Awards, running their Twitter account for the award show. Billboard was in the same building as AOL, and my friend was their director of social media at the time. So I got a lot of experience. I did a little bit more freelancing. I worked for a couple other startups on some social media stuff. I worked for PetSmart on some social media stuff because my old boss's boss at AOL, who did get laid off, then was doing marketing at PetSmart. And anyway, it was a very interesting couple of years. While I was still at AOL was when I started Simply Curated on the side, but not as a candle company. I started buying and selling vintage things. Like I would go to estate sales and flea markets on the weekend. And like, I just loved interior design. I was super addicted to HGTV, but I lived with my parents in Queens and I didn't have a house to decorate or renovate or show. Like I didn't have any way to show those talents and like manifest that. So I thought that by curating a collection of items that then I could sell or like reposition, like I found this in a pile of garbage, but if I photograph it really nice and sell it to you, online, and it was all things that were small enough that I could ship them, that I felt like I could prove my level of taste. I could prove like I was able to articulate that. And I called it Simply Curated because I was curating things simply. I really didn't, there was like not a lot of thought behind this name. And honestly, if I could do it all over again, when we did eventually rebrand to be like candle focused, I probably should have changed the name like a long time ago. But now I just feel like we're in it and I can't do that.
You can't now because like you're in too deep.
Absolutely not. But I did that kind of on and off for like a year. It was really a side. It was like a hobby. It was just the e-commerce thing. And you had to have enough hustle to like not only go out and find things, but then you had to photograph them and edit those photos and upload the photos and put listing descriptions and then market all of those things. And I wasn't doing it on Etsy because I didn't want to build Etsy's business. I wanted to build my business. I wanted to build my own brand. And I had a decent sized Twitter following at the time. So I was able to promote it, except for the fact that everybody who followed me on Twitter was like in this tech social media industry in New York City, like not exactly my target audience, right?
Yeah.
And people didn't understand that I was starting like a physical goods company. Mm-hmm. It was not something that people had done. I mean, Warby Parker was like, that just had a couple of years, and eventually that's where Jen went to work before she worked for OA.
I feel a certain type of way about Warby Parker because I was buying sunglasses for Urban. That was one of my many categories. Whenever Warby Parker was having that moment. So while you were trying to sell found vintage goods to tech bros on Twitter, I was trying to get Warby Parker to agree to do a collab with Urban, and they refused. And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm contacting you from Urban Outfitters, and you're going to get a huge deal." And they were like, "You're not the right fit." And I was like, "No one ever says no to Urban." And then I realized, oh yeah, they say no to urban.
Yeah. It was a very interesting time. But eventually what happened was I started to after about a year of doing that, I started finding all this really beautiful vintage barware. And Mad Men style bars were really popular, especially in Brooklyn. I thought, oh, these could be so cute. I can buy these sets and I can sell them. But it was really hard to find complete sets of things because they're glass and they're old and they break. So you would find 2 or 3, but the patterns were so interesting and unique. And I thought, what could I do that would preserve these as vintage pieces, not destroy them, but make them more useful in somebody's everyday life? And I remembered this article that someone had sent me, one of my old coworkers had sent me when I first started Simply Curated and I was selling vintage things, about making vintage teacups into candles. And I thought, this is not my aesthetic at all. I don't want to do this. And also one quick Etsy search told me that there were 40,000 people making vintage candle teacups. And I wasn't interested at all. Now, 40,000 people is an exaggeration, but it was not an uncovered market. Okay.
Yeah.
But I thought, what if I made them in this vintage barware? I never made a candle before. I didn't even like candles, Kristen.
No.
I did not like candles. Scented candles gave me a headache. So when I made my first batch of candles, they were unscented. I thought they're still really beautiful. People will love to look at them. This should work. And I went there's a great market in Brooklyn called Artists and Fleas.
Oh, love it.
And I booked my first weekend there. I brought all of my things, all the odds and ends. I have pictures of this booth. I had some things I wish I still had, honestly, that I had not sold. There was this one bowl that I still think about. Anyway, that I had 6 to 10 candles on one part of the shelf. So many people, when they walked up to the booth, reached for the candles and immediately put them directly to their nose. And I would just say, oh, no, they're unscented. And they would say, oh, okay. And then put it down and walk away. And I was just these candles are so beautiful. What's wrong with people?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll never forget the guy in the booth next to me. He has a brand and a wonderful clothing shop in Hudson. He makes clothes. It's called Artists and Revolutionaries. He turns and says to me, if you made those candles scented, I bet that would become your entire business. And I looked at him you're crazy. I don't want to start a candle business. Do you see this vintage stuff? I'm doing this. What do you mean? Right? But he was I don't know. I'm just saying, it seems like people are really interested in these candles. And I wasn't the only person selling candles there. They were really beautiful. It drew you in, but then you were expecting them to smell like something. Mm-hmm. So I thought a lot about that. And then I said, okay, if I'm going to make scented candles, I have to like what they smell like. They can't bother me. They can't give me a headache.
Right.
So then started into, what I didn't know at the time was an ADHD hyperfixation on what are in scented candles that could cause you headaches? What are the different things? What are the different ingredients? I knew about the wax type, but I didn't know about the fragrances and phthalates and all that kind of stuff that's sometimes in candles. So I started testing out different fragrance oils and different wicks, and I had been using wooden wicks from the very beginning, long before Makesy or the Wooden Wick Co. even existed. And I found a couple scents that I liked. And the next time I went back, about a month later to that market, I still had all my little vintage things, but I had more candles. And I made little boxes for them because it was November. It was holiday time. Mm-hmm. And I think 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 of the original scents, I think it's 3 out of 4 of the original scents that I had at that show are still in our line.
That's amazing.
And they sold so fast. They sold so quickly. And they were 2 to 3 times more expensive than the other girl who was selling candles, because I was like, well, this is a vintage glass. This piece is one of a kind. The glass alone is valued at, this much money. Mm-hmm. And the next time I went back, I had even more candles. And I was week after week selling more candles than other vintage stuff. And so after about 6 months, so in January, I agreed to do that market every weekend. I signed up for a permanent spot. So I had about 6 months until June of regularly doing it. And it was just more and more candles, to the point where there was almost nothing of the other stuff, but mostly just candles every week. People could, because I was there every week, people could bring their vintage candle vessel back I would refill it and return it to them the week after. I had repeat customers. It was really fun. And I was starting to get wholesale interest. In fact, I had this one buyer from Japan who I'm still in contact with who wanted to, import these Brooklyn vintage candles to Japan. And I was just like so confused. I had no idea. I didn't know what wholesale was, but I had a lot of other friends in this market who were making jewelry, who were making other things. And so I asked them, like, do you sell wholesale? What is that like? And then I went down another ADHD hyperfixation on the entire wholesale gift industry.
Mm-hmm.
After that, like it was around June, and my sales at this in-person market had really started to slow down. And I hit my first summer as a candle maker. And I just realized it's hot and people do not want to light things on fire.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. And I just, after maybe 2 weeks of like not even making enough money to cover my booth rent, I said, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. I needed to restructure and decide, okay, if I'm going to reimagine this business as only a candle business, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. I needed to make sure that if I was going to sell wholesale, that my margins were right for wholesale from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Not just halving whatever my retail prices were.
Yeah.
Working up my pricing structure from scratch. I found Megan Auman, and she had a website at the time, a blog called The Creative MBA, which was just this idea that, you're building, like you're learning your master's in business, like it's a trial by fire, right? But there's so many business things that creative people often don't learn. And she had really great resources. She had a couple ebooks. She had an online course. And I just devoured up all that information. And she was the first person who really like taught me kind of foundational wholesale stuff, pricing, distribution, all that kind of stuff, trade shows. And I was lucky enough that I was living in New York City. So I was able to go to the stationery show in person. I was able to walk New York Now and really get a visual of like, wow, this industry is huge. And until you're in like the wholesale industry in some kind of way, it completely changes how you walk into any store, how you experience just like the world. Because before you just walked into that store.
Yeah.
And you just looked at the things and you bought them. And you didn't think somebody had to pick out every single item that is on this shelf. Mm-hmm. Then somebody had to merchandise this item to make this whole display look really cute and price it and sticker it. I mean, all of these things, you just really like opened this whole world of retail, and especially like specialty shop retail, independent retail.
Yep.
Which I just fell absolutely in love with. But it was the summer. I had fallen in love, but I had no money to execute this plan of like rebranding my whole business as just a candle business. And I was kind of moping around my parents' house complaining that I didn't have any money. I had quit my job at AOL at this point because I was going to be a candle maker full time. Because my parents thought I had lost it, right? My mom was like, oh my gosh, get a job. Like, you need money? Get a job.
Let me answer this for you.
And of course, she probably thought that I would go back to my like corporate job in the industry that I had studied for, in like the profession that I had chosen. And I said, I'm going to go find a family and be a nanny for a year on Long Island, and then put all the money that I make from being a nanny into rebranding this business. And then after a year, I'm going to move out of New York because it's too expensive here. And again, I don't know what they thought. They were just like, okay, I guess. Like, they were like, good luck. They were not supportive. They were supportive, but like they were just confused because I was the kind of person who had so many different entrepreneurial ideas, right? Mm-hmm. I started a scrunchie business when I was 10 years old. I tried to sell Avon in high school. Like I had 3 jobs in college. I was a workaholic and I loved business. I loved my first like job where I had to work a register was at CVS, and I was like thrilled. Working a register was like the funnest thing ever. Facing floor plans, I loved it. I could not get enough. Everything was new information, and I was just like soaking in all of it information. Yeah. And it was just like that with Simply Curated. So I found this design firm out of Georgia, and I basically had a logo, but so they weren't doing like a full brand, redesign. I had done a little bit on my own, but I needed a packaging redesign because packaging was really important to me. And I knew that if we were going to sell at a certain price point, the packaging really had to match that price point. And I was working on developing our own illustrations, like our own patterns for glass that mimicked the vintage glass that I could get in larger quantities. Because as I got busier, I was running out of time to source these vintage glasses cheaply at estate sales and thrift stores. I was buying them on eBay and Etsy from other resellers for like sometimes $10 a glass. And then making a candle in that and then selling that candle for $50. Like it was not sustainable. It was not scalable. But I knew that the candle, if I was going to wholesale it and still get it screen printed like they used to do with real 22 karat gold, it was still going to be an expensive product and I needed the packaging to reflect that. So this firm was called Stitch Design Co. Now I think they go by a different acronym. They did our original rebranding and packaging, and I had barely enough money to pay them for that with all the money that I made from like nannying for a whole year. And I was paying them in installments. So like it was tough. Then I had paid them, the project was done, but now I needed to order all of this packaging.
Yeah.
And it was so expensive. And I needed to order all of the glass. And I was planning to move to Michigan. And so I launched a Kickstarter because I had no more money to do this thing. I launched a Kickstarter specifically to launch our cocktail collection. I sent this as the plan. This is what we already have ready to go. And one of my friends who was in tech as a Kickstarter consultant at the time, I asked him for a favor to give me like a 30-minute like coaching call for free. Like, what do I need to know about this? He basically said, you need to be prepared that you think you can fund 90% of your goal through people you already know through your network. If you don't have enough people who are willing to put their money where their mouth is and support you, the platform is not going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. It was an algorithm like everything else. I don't know if the word algorithm was used, but we use it so much now. But it was that kind of thing where it's like, if the algorithm sees people already willing to support this, then it's going to push it out more. Mm-hmm. I think it's the same thing now when you launch a new Etsy store or anything like that. You need to have a group of people set up to make those first 30 days, whether it's on Etsy or Faire or any of these marketplace type situations, where that initial thing is going to be rushed with people that you know, contacts that you already have, to then boost it up in the algorithm.
Yep.
And my Kickstarter was not the kind of Kickstarter where it was like, oh my gosh, we raised so much money. We barely met our goal. And I think we met it because my dad threw in probably the extra $1,000 that needed to make sure that we got it over the edge there at the end. And that was really encouraging. And I moved to Michigan in October 10 years ago. And I had until the holiday season to, kind of fulfill what wholesale I already had from my existing packaging, but then fulfill to these Kickstarter backers by December, which is what I had kind of promised them by the holidays. And then we were going to launch our new packaging and our rebranding in January. And in January, I got reached out to by a group called AMDC, or the American Design Club. And they asked if I wanted to do New York Now, and in their little group show area booth. And I was so excited because I knew I wanted to do it eventually, but I didn't know that I was ready to do it. But my parents just said, you got to just go for it.
Yeah.
So I did my first show at New York Now that winter, right after we had just launched this packaging. And it was not the greatest showing. But then Etsy had was just in the process of launching Etsy wholesale that spring. And they did a program where they were basically running a contest. It was like a pitch contest. So they were going to bring in 20 different brands. And so you had to apply and win this contest. And then they were going to bring you to New York to pitch all of these big stores and media in person in the summer. So before holiday season. So I made an Etsy account just for this purpose, because I originally was not going to be on Etsy and selling our products, but I had to be on Etsy if I wanted to join Etsy wholesale. So I did this and I won this contest and went back to Brooklyn to set up at the Etsy headquarters and pitch to all these brands. And then they were going to award their favorites at the end with a contract, with a retail contract for the season. And because they were doing a special Etsy wholesale section in a lot of these stores. And I did not win. However, the buyers from Nordstrom reached out to me again after the presentation and said, we still really liked your stuff. We want to bring it in for this year. And I was like, this was my first like holiday season with the new packaging. Like this was 9 years ago. And we also from New York now, we got a contract with Urban. So I shipped my first like big retail like pallet orders to Nordstrom and Urban in my first
holiday season.
And
was your mind just like, whoa?
Well, and the Nordstrom order was $60,000. I was like, I made it. I made all the right decisions. Everything is great. This is amazing. But Nordstrom, and here's the first like hint that I felt like, okay, I was so excited. They placed the order and they ordered like they had a different order for like what was going to go online and what was actually going to be in stores. Mm-hmm. And they had 3 or 4 different scents of the cocktail collection. Now this is like, a $50 candle at retail or 48, I think at the time it was, but like expensive with a brand that nobody knows and no reasoning behind it. Like there was not like a shelf talker about like what this brand was or who this person was or whatever. And then a bunch of our travel candle scents. So our lowest price item and our most expensive item, not our median, which was a very different aesthetic packaging wise. So I understand why they didn't choose that for this particular holiday display. But then I learned that at retail, they were only bringing in 1 SKU of the cocktail collection, 1 fragrance. And I thought to myself, this is a bad idea. This isn't going to work. One scent on a shelf by its lonesome with other travel candles next to it, like not, merchandise. I was like, they should diversify. You can do the same spend, but you should diversify this among some of the SKUs that you're going to put in, whatever. But I just thought, this is a Nordstrom. Am I really going to tell the buyer at Nordstrom that she's making the wrong choice? So I didn't say anything. And it was a huge failure. Mm. In February, I don't remember when, but eventually they came back with the numbers on how it did. What was our sell-through, right? And the travel candles did great. It's like 70%. Thrilled. The cocktail collection, unsurprisingly, at its expensive price point with brand that nobody had heard of and whatever was like 25%.
Oof.
It was like crushing, right? And they asked me if I would do a buyback. Mm. And I said, no, because I knew what that was. I scanned my contract for it and I knew it was not in there. I knew I did not agree to that. And I just said, I'm so sorry. That would bankrupt this business. Mm-hmm. You can put it on sale.
Yeah.
So it was in the Nordstrom sale that summer and they have never ordered again. Now, it was like a really hard lesson to learn because you felt like you made it. You were like, this is it. This business is going to the moon. And then it was just like nothing, right?
Screeching halt.
Thankfully, they paid out, whatever. I made the money that I was going to make. I didn't have to take it back. I didn't have to lose my business after being in business for only a year, but it was like a really hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
My relationship with Urban was very similarly stop and start because it was through American Design Club. And so I didn't have direct contact with those buyers. I couldn't pitch them. I just kept hearing they want it, they didn't want it. They reordered it a couple times, but it was not like a solid relationship that I was building with a buyer there. Mm-hmm. I also had the experience a couple of years later of a buyer from Urban reaching out to me and saying, oh my gosh, we love this stuff so much. And I'm just like, yeah, you used to carry it, but she didn't know. She just started.
Yeah.
They're just changing so often, Yeah. And so we have had a couple different, corporate relationships like that. But for the most part, our success has been not in the big fish. Mm-hmm. It was in lots of little small fish that were really consistent and great. And I learned the lesson that 50 small retailers who consistently order from you every 3 to 6 months, it beats one giant order that you're so stressed about that then might not even work out well any day. And
it's such a good it's such a good perspective because I think so many brands are always striving for what's my really large retailer. I want this one, I want to get into Urban. I want to get into Nordstrom. And if I don't, then I'm not successful. But they actually have 100 really amazing, small accounts. And it's those are actually really good because you're building relationships with them. And so it's interesting. Not interesting necessarily, but a good perspective to share, and I know that you've really built your business on connecting with gift brands. And that's like when we connected. And I shared with you before we started recording, like that you had such a really clear, when you were, it wasn't necessarily a pitch. It was when we were talking and I was like, what would you recommend for my shop? Because buyers want to know what's going to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And you were one of the few, back then at least, you were one of the few small brands that were like, this is what you should buy because other gift box brands, this is what works. And I was like, done. Thank you for giving me that perspective and like not being afraid on your end to say like, this is what you should buy. And this is what I know will genuinely work for you. And then I bought from you for years, maybe not to the tune of what Nordstrom was buying from, but like, you know, it builds that loyalty. Does that perspective or that experience you had, did that give you that perspective as you've been reaching out to shops or connecting with shop owners since then?
I think that perspective kind of came from our next like 3 years in wholesale, where we were trying to figure it out. We still had the cocktail collection, and that was the like shiny thing, right? It looked beautiful.
Yeah.
Whenever we did trade shows, like it was what brought people in. Oh, look at these, right?
Yeah.
And it was not the right fit for probably 80 to 90% of retailers. And I knew that because of the price point. There was definitely a store it could sell in.
Yeah.
I would have loved to be in Neiman Marcus. It would have been great. Like it was a very high-end candle. And maybe if I had priced it even more expensive, that would have been more apparent. But it was also the story of our whole brand up until that point, having started with vintage. Like it was the story that I was telling. And then it led to this. And so even though we had a good, better, best, we had other price points, we had other products, it wasn't the thing that people wanted. It wasn't what attracted them to the brand. And it wasn't the story that they knew how to tell. Even our sales reps, when we brought them on eventually, and I told that same story, then that was the story that they were telling. But they would convince their stores on this story, and then they would bring in a line that was not a good fit for like a paper goods store.
Mm-hmm.
Your average checkout value is $25 or something. You're not going to sell a bunch of $50 candles.
Yep.
It's just not going to work. It's not what the customer wants from you or what they're expecting to spend when they walk into that environment. And I couldn't like retrain the buyers. Like I couldn't train that story out of them because it was just what they heard. It was what they clicked and that's what they were running with. And they would open new account after new account on the strength of that story and that product line that then when it wasn't successful for the retailer, they were like, oh, this doesn't work. Your products don't have good sell-through. Whereas the stores that I was pitching and selling to in other areas where I was pitching them on something and selling through something that was like the right fit, we had reorder after reorder. So like our experiences were completely different because we were selling it completely differently. Yeah. So it came to a point where I had to discontinue that entire collection, which of course my reps thought was a huge mistake because this was
your story.
This was the story. This was the shiny thing. And I said, this isn't the end of the story. This is just the end of this chapter. Mm-hmm. And we launched our botanical collection, which also has illustrations on the same size glass, can be reusable as barware, but it's not made with 22 karat gold or boxes that, Kristen, cost me over $3 a box.
Oh,
you know, like this collection was
sustainable,
killing us. Mm-hmm. And I needed a more affordable, like I still am a packaging snob. I still created a beautiful packaging, but the reps just were like, oh, this is such a loss for your line that you're losing this. And I'm like, literally, it's not. It's going to help so much. But the fact that you don't see that or understand that just really shows how like misaligned we are.
Right.
In what our goals were for the business. I did have a great conversation with one of our original rep groups before they took us on, where the founder of that rep group, she sat me down and she said, so do you have any plans to like kit these scents out? Meaning like you're going to create other products in these fragrances. Mm-hmm. Lotion, soap, reed diffusers. And at the time I just said, no, we're a candle company. I just want to do this. I don't want to do that. And eventually in that particular area, I realized that she was right. Buyers wanted to be able to bring in a line that had a whole collection around these fragrances. Your fragrances were the things that were unique to your brand, and they wanted luxury products in this category that then they could sell across the board. So once we started doing that, we launched our first non-candle product at Shop Object in February of 2020.
Ooh, what a time.
So it was a reed diffuser. And you know what? It went great. The buyers loved it. They were so excited. Everything was going great. It doubled our orders at the show because they still ordered all the candles they were going to order. And then they ordered reed diffusers in all of those scents. It was amazing. And then like 60% of those orders never even shipped because we all know what happened. We don't need to go into that.
Yeah.
But it gave me really incomplete data on, was this product a failure? Like, do people want this? Because it kind of languished for like a year where like just no one really was buying it. I wasn't marketing it well. It wasn't until we continued the expansion of the kitting where we launched our hand wash and our hand lotion. And now we had a candle in 2 sizes, a reed diffuser, a hand wash, and a lotion. That really, it increased the sales of the reed diffuser as well. Because now stores wanted to buy the whole thing and bring it all in and show their clients. So it's this like ever evolving fit because you have your kind of like ideal store. Like the ideal store for us is usually like a home goods, not Home Goods, the brand, a home store.
Yes.
A store that sells home furnishings
and goods
and things and, sometimes kitchen things or whatever. But usually we did really well in like furniture shops or the interior designer stores because somebody can't buy a couch every weekend.
Right.
Someone's not buying a whole lighting package every weekend.
Yep.
But they want to go in, they want to shop around on Saturday with their friends. They're going to smell a candle. Oh my gosh, this smells so good. Like it's an impulse purchase, but it's an impulse purchase that then hooks them on your fragrances, on your line. And then they go back to that store because, oh my gosh, I was hearing about this candle, but I also tried this lotion that was so amazing. And now I want to buy the lotion. And oh my gosh, they have a hand wash too. Like it was really like the thing that we needed to do, but we always had all of these other kind of like offshoots of store types that would carry different parts of our line. So we have flower shops that do really well with our botanical collection and always have. We have a couple really consistent accounts. One, Winston Flowers in Massachusetts. They have like 4 different locations. They're our largest retailer right now. We had a really good relationship with Farm Girl Flowers for years where they put our travel candles in some of their boxes. And that was like getting paid for marketing. So many people would come to us because they received one of our candles in a gift from somebody else. And it was just like the perfect thing. That relationship kind of went away in 2020 when their business model changed a little bit, but it was a very lucrative for a really long time. But I struggled to change our manufacturing processes after Farm Girl went away because I kind of didn't know that they weren't coming back. And we were at the point before that and before COVID where we were making 4,000 travel candles a month for them. This was they were about 1/3 of our annual revenue.
Okay. Pretty important account.
And it was the pandemic. It was hard. We didn't feel the loss in the same way because we were making up for it in a lot of ways because of e-commerce and because of all the online shopping and support of small business that we saw. But it was a real blow to our wholesale program and to the way that we were manufacturing because we would pretty much run every month up until that point where we were making product just for them. And then we would have like a week where we could restock our own stuff before we were back to like fulfilling for them.
Yeah.
So because I didn't make that shift like quickly enough or whatever, we kind of struggled where we would have a lot of stuff on the shelf and there wasn't the need for such a large production team, but it felt like we were still growing. And so we moved into this warehouse that we're in now and more than doubled our space for storing things for production. As we kept launching new products, that means new and different raw materials of packaging and bottles and glassware and things like that. We felt like we really needed the extra space, but we were going into a recession and Farm Girl had to come back and I had product that I didn't know how to discount or move like in that way, the same way that you would if you had a retail store, because it wasn't going bad and I could sell it eventually. But that meant that there wasn't work for my production team to do every day. So eventually we had to lay off like most of our staff last year, which was really, really difficult for me because I had mostly an upward trajectory up until this point. Not really had like a down year. And 2022, I think, was our first down year where I had just been hiring like we were doing so well.
Yeah.
I finally had some good access to credit, which I hadn't had previously. And I'll be completely honest, like my business we had our best revenue year ever. And we lost $100,000. And I had never had the privilege to even be able to lose that much money before.
Right, right.
But I wasn't paying close enough attention. And the bookkeepers that I was working with were not bookkeepers in the way that they're going to tell you when the ship is going wrong. They were just like, here's the report.
They're not advisors. They're not like a CFO advisor. They're just managing your books and making sure
that it's correct and accurate, even if it's accurate and you're going down in flames.
Yeah.
So we've spent the last 2 years kind of digging out of, like, honestly, still recovering from that loss. Because now you have sales that you need, but you're basically servicing debt. You're servicing interest. We're dealing with a lot of what I think a lot of post-COVID businesses like are struggling with, whether that is, EIDL loans coming due or whatever, or just general credit cycling, debt servicing kind of stuff. And I'm pretty transparent about that because I don't want people to think that, oh my gosh, you're doing like everything is so amazing, because it's not easy. This is a very difficult thing to do. And every industry, every category of products, even within the handmade product industry, is going to have businesses that I would say are outliers. They, not to diminish what they've done and say that they got lucky, but it's kind of a very unique situation that is not everyone else's situation. And I saw that with Rifle Paper Co. I saw that with a couple different candle companies. And you're comparing yourself to their rise and how quickly they grew and that level of success. How many stores they have? What are they doing? You're trying to model that because it seems like they're the only people you've ever seen do it. So it's the only model you even have to follow.
Yeah.
Even if they're like, please stop trying to model stuff after me. You're like, no one else is even showing anything. How am I supposed to know what to do? How am I supposed to know what equipment to use? How am I supposed to know, what way to go? And for me, that business was PF Candle Company. And I love Kristen and I love Tom. And I think that what they've done is amazing. But continually trying to model that when there were so many aspects of my business that was very different was honestly hurting me more mentally than anything else, because I kept feeling like a failure for not, I think I held on to the number of employees we had for longer than I should have, because I felt like that number of employees was an indicator of my success.
Yes. 100%.
Instead of looking at the numbers at the bottom line being an indicator of my success, it felt like outwardly, if you're doing well, you should be able to hire people and support them. And I took the responsibility of being their boss and providing a job and providing an income and a living so seriously, to the point where I was personally, financially suffering and putting in my own money to run payroll.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, that story is not, I don't want to say unique to you. It happens so often because as small business owners, like we really take it personally. Like our heart and soul is into it. It's not AOL. Was it AOL that laid you off right away? It's not like this. I think I got the wrong. Comcast. Yeah. It's not Comcast. They're just like, whatever, you're a number, it's small business, but it is such a important thing to remember that like the outward view of success is not necessarily indicative of the bottom line. Like some of the most profit rich businesses on the outside don't look like they're, I don't want to say much of anything, but like that they're like setting the world on fire, but they have profit. They're not, trying to like strive towards this, what other people deem as successful, and it's easier said than done because we only see what we see on social media. Like that is in our face, especially as small businesses, like all these like revenue claims and I am an X, figure business a year. Like, I don't really care. What do your books look like?
I literally started replying to people on threads when I would see those posts. And I said, what's the bottom line? I don't care what the top line is.
Yeah.
What was the bottom line? You can't call yourself a 6-figure entrepreneur. You're not making a 6-figure income. You might not be making any income. I have no idea. And I'm not saying that you have to tell me that, but if you're going to sell me a course based on this flashy number or try to, then you need to really show me what it is that you're taking. It's kind of like, show me your tax returns. Like, I don't know. Like, I need
receipts. Timelines.
I have receipts. I have always been really, really transparent, probably too transparent about our numbers. And I think that it's because people see somebody, they assume that you must be doing amazing. Like, you must be, right? Even when I was by myself, because I was single for most of this journey. I got married in 2020. And it was never really my intention to bring my husband into the business. When he moved out here, we just thought we would wait out the pandemic and then he would just go back to his job, which was, he's always had kind of a blue collar job. He's prior military. Like, he would just get, certified out here and do HVAC out here or do something else or, just have a blue collar job. That was the plan. Because he was helping out so much around the studio with COVID and we really worked really well together and we have very complementary skills, then we decided that we would bring him on and he would work for Simply Curated.
If you're ready to take your wholesale business to the next level on FAIR, I invite you to check out the FAIR Bootcamp. It's the only program of its kind that combines a step-by-step growth approach to optimize and stand out on FAIR and buyer relationship building strategies to capture the attention of your ideal retailers, both on and off the FAIR platform. With bite-sized, action-focused trainings, the FAIR Bootcamp is designed to deliver results as quickly and efficiently as possible because I know you are busy and you do not have time to waste. So to learn more, head over to kristenfishercoaching.com/FAIR Bootcamp.
Now, I have always been very vocal in saying that, like, people are like, what motivates you? I'm like, the fact that no one else is paying my bills. I didn't start this business with a husband who had a salary and health insurance. Not to say that there's anything wrong if that's how you started your business. But I didn't have a safety net. And that motivation to pay rent every month, put gas in my car. People are like, when did you start paying yourself? And I'm like, I started paying myself 10 years ago when I moved out here and I didn't take another job. Was it a salary? No, but it has paid all of my bills and put food on the table and gas in the car, which for a long time was my metric of what I was going to pay myself. Just kind of covering my bases. Yeah. I know that that's not the healthiest, and I know that that's not necessarily the best plan, and I know that I probably need to read Profit First, like yesterday. But this was how I survived. It was a survival. There was no other source of income coming in. And so then it was extra scary when now my whole household was dependent on this business. And a lot of times people would say, well, why doesn't Doug just go out and get a job? When I complain about the business struggling. And I'm like, because they're two different things. I couldn't pay anybody as little as I pay Doug and I to do what we have to get done. We're just making it work.
God bless Doug.
Which is why the recent changes in my, income of doing content creation stuff is such a weird and interesting shift in my life. Because
let's talk about this. I
have supplementary income. Yeah. Not for the first time. For the last couple of years. So somewhere in the middle of this long story that I didn't even get into at all, I got really into floral design and I started a flower business on the side because I turn all of my hobbies into businesses like a psychopath.
Honestly, sometimes I'm like, can you just do something for fun? Like, not everything.
For sure. And I did reach that point with flowers where it was like, I love this. And the amount of work that it will take to consistently reach my target customer and book enough weddings and whatever for this to be kind of sustainable was too much work because it was causing Simply Curated to suffer. And that was the thing that was paying my bills, right? Yeah. I was too stretched too thin.
I mean, let me tell you, I started making sourdough this year. I've made 6 loaves. Okay. I made 6 loaves. They were delicious and actually like pretty impressively perfect to the point that I was like, should I have a sourdough business? We
are the same person.
What the hell are you doing? Just stick with these 6 loaves. Like, come on.
1,000,000%. But so when I stopped doing flowers, like as a business, I've been doing it freelance now for 4 years.
Which is awesome. You can get that creative outlet without running the business yourself.
It's very different. I don't necessarily get the same creative itches scratched, but it's keeping my skills sharp and I enjoy it. And it has been a great, especially because the wedding season really does overlap with our slow season with candles. It has been a lovely source of supplemental income for me.
Yeah.
But when I started cooking more, I started cooking a lot at home during COVID, like everybody did. Mm-hmm. And I had this very brief window in the very like early shutdown, like we're all like literally trapped in our houses and not leaving, where I was making videos like on my Instagram for like my friends and family, like what I was eating, what I was making. And I was just coming out of like being keto for like 2 years. So it was like my first time like eating bread and pasta and like all the stuff. And it was like amazing. And I had this brief moment because I consumed a lot of content around cooking and food, especially on YouTube, that I thought, oh my gosh, what if I just was like a food YouTuber and COVID just like changed my life, whatever. And then, quickly the world was like, hey, ma'am, we need candles. You need to come back and make more candles. And I was like, oh, okay, right. Never mind. I'm not going to be a food YouTuber. What was I thinking? And then this past year, at the beginning of January, one of my friends, she posted something like she wanted to be better about cooking at home because she was spending so much money on takeout. Her and her husband, she was like, literally all of our credit card debt is just from like Uber Eats. And she was very vulnerable even sharing that, but she's like, I don't have the habit of cooking at home. I don't really know how. I'm not good at it. And I started making videos publicly, but mostly just to show her, like, you could make this, or you could do this, or you could freeze all these things in individual portions. And she was like, whoa. Sarah, this is adulting on a level that I do not know how to adult. Like, you're like, this is like way up here. I'm not even, we're just talking about like, maybe we're going to get some like meal kits. You're like, next level, because I've been cooking my whole life. I love to cook. I love to talk about it. I love all that stuff. But I said, okay, fine. But still, I was like, but people need to learn about this. Like, people need to know that you could do this, even if have a small household, even if you're single. Like, this is stuff I wish I knew when I was single, when I was trying to just cook for myself. So I kept making content, but I was making it at a rapid pace. I was making like 3 videos a day on TikTok for all of January and February. I just burned out completely. And in March, something, kind of happened with our business that really caused me to like have to halt some things. And I was burned out. I was stressed. I was financially stressed because of the business. And I just stopped really creating content, even if it was something that like brought me joy. And over the summer, I was gardening and I kept thinking, I want to make content about gardening because I garden in a community garden. I rent an apartment. I don't have a place to like grow things, but like people need to know that like there are community gardens that you can sign up for. But I just didn't have the time to also make the content and do my job and freelance flowers. So I just kind of didn't make any content. And then towards the end of August, I was like, I got to start making videos again. I want to get back into this. I know it's possible. I know people are monetizing this. I can do it. So I started making videos again in like the end of August, beginning of September. Beginning of September, I had about 5,000 or 6,000 followers on Instagram. This is my personal Instagram account. And about 3,000-ish followers on TikTok that I had just started, last year. By the middle of September, I hit 10,000 followers on TikTok, and I was so excited because that means I could monetize on TikTok. Like very similar to YouTube, TikTok will pay you for views. And I was like, this is so great. Wouldn't it be great if we could earn like an extra $1,000 a month? Like that would go so far to like help out our family. And, like that would just be such a nice thing on the side, right? And then at the very end of September, I had a video go viral, like 2 million views in 2 days. Now is at 7 million views on Instagram and, 4 or 5 million views on TikTok. I actually don't even know. But between hitting 10,000 followers on TikTok and then that video going viral at the end of the month, I ended September at 40,000 followers on TikTok and very similar on Instagram. And then last month in October on Halloween, I hit 100,000 followers on Instagram and I met like 96,000 on TikTok.
It's so crazy.
And I have had the experience of being on social media for a very long time. And if we roll this interview back to where I said I started a video blog in 2007, 8, before like right around when Twitter was founded, like it's not that I don't know how to create content. I've been creating content for Simply Curated for a long time. But there's also a lot of guilt around having this quick of success in, again, something that is not my primary business. Feeling like, why couldn't I do this for Simply Curated? And I have to remind myself that it's the same problem that I've always had with the internet, with selling candles online, with social media, it's that I can't get you to smell them through the screen. But I can't get people to taste the food through the screen either.
Yeah.
So there's something there that I still have to like learn and figure out that I think I can do, that I think might be helpful. But
I think like what it comes down to, and this might be oversimplifying it, but like it's what people, how your content benefits the end consumer of the content. It's like you're not selling, you're showing them how they can make their life easier, better, like healthy recipes, quick recipes, how to budget and, do like budget friendly meals and use these amazing super cubes, which like I need to buy ever since I saw them in Shark Tank. I need to buy them. Just send me your affiliate link. But you're creating content that serves a need for someone's life. People don't want to be sold to all the time. I'm not saying you do that in your content for Simply Curated by any means, but like that's what I think is we get wrong a lot, and myself included. It's like, how do you have a product brand where you want to make more money from it and you want people to buy from you, but like, how do you make that content be useful for someone's life? And like, that's, I think, the difference.
Well, I think that the kind of content that I was always creating on Simply Curated, which was a lot of behind the scenes content and stuff, it was useful to other candle makers, where the majority of my followers on Simply Curated are other small business owners who are looking at me the same way that I look at PF Candle Co. as like this aspirational thing.
Yeah.
But the content for the end consumer needs to be more aspirational lifestyle content around really beautiful aesthetic homes, of which I am not in possession of one. So that it's truly the main reason why I feel like it's been hard to create content for Simply Curated on a very consistent basis, because my apartment is janky and my bathroom is purple and my kitchen is so ugly. And I don't have the place, the like beautiful aesthetic place to create the kind of content that like, I know who my target customer is for Simply Curated, but I don't live that lifestyle. So it's been hard to create content in that space where it's almost like you need a me for that space, where you would need a content creator to create good content in that space. Or I need to rent out beautiful homes, once a month, whatever, and have content days, which I totally could do. But because I am also pouring every single one of the candles right now and shipping all of these orders with my husband, and I have one part-time person helping with finishing, labeling, packing, whatever. It's like I don't have the time to also be the content creator for my business. And I probably could figure that out if I decided to say, okay, now we need to hire somebody back to do the manufacturing side to help out so that I have more time to dedicate to the marketing and sales side of these amazing products that I know are lovely, that I know people would like, and that I literally just feel like I have a brand awareness problem.
I mean, most brands, that is the thing. You have an amazing product, you have a gorgeous brand, your packaging is on point, you know who your customer is. It's just a visibility and awareness thing. It's getting PR, it's having content that's consistently put out there. And it's like, okay, well, how do you do that when you're also doing the back end? And that's just part of growing your business. Like it doesn't happen overnight, but there always has to be this like thing in our brain that is like, you have to be selling every single day. And what that looks like doesn't necessarily mean like, here is my candle, buy it. But like, how are you showing up and making people want to give you their money? Like that has to be a big priority. And it's easier said than done whenever you also have to like make the stuff to ship.
It's a really interesting journey because I feel like I'm learning a lot about these platforms through this other, content creation journey, which is that these algorithms really work.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
People need to stop blaming the algorithm because it will find the people. The video that I made the initial video that went viral, which I should say, I have had 5 or 6 videos in the last month hit over 1 million views on Instagram without using any trending audio. All the audio is just my voice. It's a voiceover.
Well, you have a great voice for voiceovers. I'm always like, oh, she's like romanticizing shepherd pie.
It's really annoying. And I was like,
rude. They're a troll. No, I'm like, literally, you had one the other day and I was like, oh, her voice just like talking about shepherd's pie. Like I could listen to it like all day.
Oh my gosh. That shepherd's pie video, I messed up in the voiceover. I do know the right answer. I know that shepherd's pie is made with lamb and cottage pie is made with beef. But I said it backwards in the voiceover that I was recording late at night and I was tired. And people think that I intentionally did it to rage bait them because the comments are all people correcting me that I was wrong and that I don't know what I'm
doing. So therein lies the problem with going viral.
No, it's like it reaches. Anyway, what I was going to say was the viral video initially, it was talking about my friend and a real conversation with a friend of mine that I had who she's single and about cooking for one and how I cook for one all the time because my husband and I don't always eat the same things. And I kept saying that I make freezer meals and she didn't understand what I was talking about. But I took her over to my freezer and I opened the door and I said, this is what it looks like. And I pull out all of these different frozen super cubes meals and components of meals and all these things. And it was just like a light bulb went off in her head. She was just like, this is amazing. Because when you said freezer meals, I just kept thinking casserole, like big full-size casseroles and then like crock pot dump meals and all the things that you see for people that are, no shade to them, preparing food for a larger family. When you're single or it's just you and your partner, cooking feels really overwhelming because then you have all these leftovers and then you have to eat it the next 3 days in a row. You don't even want to eat it. It's not that you don't like it. You're just not in the mood. Or like you order takeout and there's way too much leftover Chinese and you don't want to eat leftover Chinese for the next 4 days. Like I just freeze all of it. Anyway, the video specifically used the words like single and lives alone multiple times, not even intentionally like trying to put keywords in the voiceover. But when you use a voiceover or you type copy on the screen or you have captions or you put it in your copy, the algorithm indexes all of that and pushed it out to the people who needed to see this specific content. And that video alone, I can track at the number of people who hit follow after watching that video. Because it was like, it wasn't just a funny video that was viral or a dance or somebody falling down or hurting themselves or whatever, something like goofy that you send to your friends. It was like, oh my gosh, I need this. Yes, please teach me how to do this. I will follow you because I need to figure this out. The only thing that sucks was that I didn't immediately have a PDF guide to sell them on how to do it, which I'm working on, but it is harder than it looks. But basically, the point is that whoever your target audience is, like, I know the algorithms work because I'm constantly being served images of beautiful kitchens in English countrysides. And I never told Instagram that that's what I like.
Yeah.
And I would like the picture every single time I saw it. So it just keeps showing me other accounts that I'm not following in my main feed. So if you create content that doesn't need to be necessarily a reel, or you don't have to dance on the internet or whatever, but you have to put the right words in there that are resonating with people. The things that get more likes, the things that get more engagement are the things that the algorithm will continue to push out.
And what's
sometimes
interesting
even when that engagement is negative, but
yeah. I mean, it's still engagement, you know.
Yeah, but that's not what we're trying to do
right now. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's interesting, these platforms weren't search engines even a year ago. They were starting to like test it out, but I feel like in the last years when they really came out and they said, I mean, TikTok kind of was the first
search engine now.
Yeah, for sure. And they were the first, I feel like, social platform that came out and said like, we are a search engine. And then Instagram was like, we kind of are too. But now it's like you have to optimize your bio. You have to optimize your captions. And like, if you're going to be making the effort to create any content, it needs to be in alignment with what you're ultimately trying to sell. So it's like, you don't have to always be selling in your content, but those keywords need to attract the person that are going to come in and like, why are they going to follow you? If you have one funny thing where you go viral because you're dancing on TikTok or on your reel, but it has nothing to do with like the rest of your content, then that's a waste of your time. And that you're not going to actually benefit from going viral. But like you did, because all your content aligns to what you went viral for.
Right. And I'm dealing with where like the virality of it is like not even necessary, because what you really want are 50,000 people, 100,000 people that are all the right people who really wanted to see this and are like, yes,
right.
Hit that follow button. I want to learn. I want more. They're telling the algorithm, I want more of this, please. Right. And so whatever it is that you're sharing, you just need to, it's got to be that's attracting the right people. Right. And you can do that by simply like looking at the people that are following you. When I was creating reels with lots of behind the scenes content of making candles, I would see the followers that we're getting, and they're all other candle companies. I haven't figured out what it is that I need to really shift, or how it is I really need to do that on that side. And it's kind of caused me to step back from as much social media creation as I have. But Reels originally were what helped me go from being stuck at 8,000 followers on my Simply Curated account for literally 8 years to finally hitting 10K, to hitting 20K within a few more months and 30K a few more months after that. It was Reels that did that. And that was because that was what the algorithm was pushing. But it was still the caption in there. I wasn't doing voiceovers as much. I think I maybe did a few. But I still was trying to use trending sounds or relaxing things or whatever. But I think I need more to create the kind of lifestyle content or behind the scenes content, like just showing it in somebody's home, in that ideal home of that ideal customer, or the aspirational home of your ideal customer. Either way, right. You need to be able to create that kind of content.
Yeah.
And show what it is that your ideal customer wants to see and wants to consume. The thing that really like moved the needle for me in the beginning of September was I saw an interview with Gary Vaynerchuk, which was so funny because I used to know Gary Vaynerchuk very well. There are multiple pictures of me and him. We went on a cruise together. It's a whole thing. Anyway.
Went on a cruise with Gary Vaynerchuk?
I went on a Gary Vaynerchuk cruise, to be clear. It was a wine library TV cruise, but there was still a very small group of people.
Okay.
Gary knows who I am. Maybe not anymore now that I've changed my name, but
he knows.
But anyway, I saw a clip. I unfollowed a lot of his content because it just gets to be a lot. But I saw a clip of his where he's talking to somebody about algorithms and about how much content you should create. Like, how many videos should I be posting a day, right? He said, it is not your job. Like, the algorithm's job is not to service you as this content creator or you as the small business. It is not to benefit you. It is to benefit the consumer, the person who's either consuming the content or that you're targeting or that is watching or viewing this type of media. The algorithm's job is to find the media that they want to see and then show it to them so that they do the thing that they want, that the algorithm wants them to do. On TikTok, that's either stay on the platform or buy on TikTok Shop or something like that. On Instagram, it's that they want them to be sending it to their friends. They want to see that engagement in the DMs. They want all that they want the shares, right? The algorithm is doing that. And so he said, it doesn't matter. If you were to put out 18 pieces of content on the same day, no one is going to see all 18 pieces of that content. One, maybe your biggest fan is going to, and they're going to be thrilled because they literally can't get enough of you. But you can put it out and just see what works and let the content find the people that it's supposed to find. And you could literally see that. You would see videos that didn't go anywhere, and then videos that did really well or got really good engagement, and things that were kind of in the middle. You could just see how that would work. So it just encouraged me to just post and it doesn't matter that you're not posting too much. Yeah. You're not overwhelming your audience. They're just not going to see it.
Yeah.
And we're all complaining that they're not seeing it anyway. So why not just put out way more and then maybe they'll see something.
Yep. And on the flip side too, if you are overwhelmed by content, then it's better to put out quality content that is going to be optimized and reach the right person versus just pumping out on TikTok to be successful, I have to do 5 videos a day. Well, that's not going to work if those 5 videos are garbage or not optimized. So it's do what's right for you.
The algorithm, I don't think really cares how many videos a day you're posting. It's not penalizing you for posting too many videos a day or not enough videos a day. It's more that if you post 5, there's a better chance that one will hit. I truly think.
Yeah, so it's a numbers game.
It's just like wholesale outreach.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to
No, it is. It is a numbers game because and I think also it's encouraging you to tell the same or I'm going to encourage you to tell the same story. Because I'm so bad at that too. Every time I tell somebody that they need to like trim their wick or they need to let their candle burn all the way, to the edge, they're like, oh my God, I never knew that. And you're like, wow, I've been saying that literally for years, every single time, like all the time. But maybe not enough, or maybe they didn't specifically hear it. And so you just never really know like who's going to see it when it is that you post it. So keep posting it. Because somebody else asked me, or they were saying that they want to create food content, but they're worried they're trying to run out of recipes, right? I don't have enough. Everybody's only got like max 10 recipes in their arsenal. Like, how do I keep creating, content? And I just said, you can get so much content out of one recipe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And you can reshare that recipe so many different times because somebody didn't see it the last time, or you're sharing a different version of it, or you're reheating the leftovers, or you're telling a story about this one time that you brought it to a potluck. Like there's so many things that the same item, right? What I'm trying to sell you is this recipe. I'm trying to get you to click on my Substack and read it and subscribe and whatever, or to want to make it enough. But I can keep talking about that over and over again. And I think that I knew that on the candle side, but I wasn't practicing what I'm practicing now, which is like, I'm still putting out like 2 to 3 videos a day. And it's not hard to create that content because I got to eat.
I was going to say, and it flows easily to you because it's just like something you, I mean, not that you don't love Simply Curated by any means, but like you have to eat, you love cooking, and it's something that you just can talk about all day, every day, because it fulfills you. And so it just feels there's less friction with creating that, it seems like.
I think the things that I'm doing every day on the Simply Curated side to show you that would really only, I think, in my opinion, attract the people that I've been attracting, which is other small business owners.
So it's a different approach, a different approach. Yeah. So what do you think is next for you with how you're going to lean into the content creation, balancing Simply Curated? Big question, loaded question.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. We haven't really talked so much about the timeline. We're recording this kind of like right after the presidential election. So there's a lot of like unknowns, right? For our economy, for small businesses. And I think that last holiday season was super make or break for a lot of retailers. This holiday season is super make or break for a lot of retailers. But it's not just the holiday season. It's what's going to happen in January. Are all my prices going to go way up? Trying to figure out now. I mean, do we need to place it's like a huge overseas order in December so that we can get some stuff in and have that before, the prices go up? But especially when you know that you might need to make those decisions, but you feel like you don't have the money to make those choices, it's a restricting kind of feeling. So I'm not really sure what's next for Simply Curated. Yeah. But at the very least, it feels like there is, for the first time since I quit my nanny job, where I have other income coming in that I can choose to either, use to make Simply Curated a little bit easier, or use to pay our bills at home so that we're not needing to take so much of the cash out of the business right now, which I think sometimes when I talk about this with other entrepreneurs who are less further into it than I am, and I'm very transparent about what it's like right now, they tell me that it's really depressing because they want to hear that this has to get easier, right? And I'm here saying it has to get easier, and I'm depressed and I'm stressed out or whatever. But my husband, Doug, he put this post up on Instagram. I think this was like 2 or 3 years ago, where he did this voiceover, and I can find the reel for you because I think it was great. And it was basically saying like, it doesn't get easier, but you get better at handling it. You know more than you did. Yeah. And if my work experience and what you guys have gotten of like a blitz through it, and I'm so sorry that it's so long and convoluted, but like has taught me anything, it's that like every little thing that you learn, the fact that I went to school for photography and I do all of our product photography now, and I went to school for like media studies, and I'm literally creating media to sell products, on the internet. Like I know how to edit video. I know how to edit voiceovers. I know I did anyway, I like all these things, like it all makes sense eventually. It all kind of comes together to be useful. But you have to trust that like you're getting better at it, even though it feels like it's harder.
Yeah.
So,
it's like the phrase like new level, new devil. That's the beauty and the pain of running a business. Like you just continue to get better. And as you get better, you make your business grow. And as your business grow, new problems come and it keeps challenging you. And if you don't like that, then like the entrepreneurial ride, like get off of it now, because it's not going to just suddenly get easier. But the problems that you're feeling right now in a year aren't going to be your problems anymore, because you're going to get them, you're going to figure them out. So those are going to become easy. It's just going to be a new thing that you're just challenged and figuring out.
Yeah. It's really interesting, honestly, like the whole journey of like, what are you learning? What are you getting better at? But I did just sign a contract with Supercubes, which is like a sponsorship contract to do like 3 promoted videos a month, which I obviously can't talk about how much money that is for.
Yeah, of course.
But it is a way to provide like that. And then I have other brand deals like in my inbox. And so just realizing like, wow, this whole influencer thing, even though I'm like, not showing my like outfits online and I'm not doing beauty stuff or whatever, but like I got reached out to by like a condiment company. I got reached out to by like a frozen dumpling company. And it was just like, wow, okay. Like,
awesome.
And you have enough followers where they want access to your audience, because I have an extremely targeted audience now where, these are people who want to learn how to cook and who want to utilize convenience things in their freezer and in ways like that to make their lives, easier.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning a ton on that side, learning how to charge, learning about usage rights. And I still have a little bit of guilt, even saying out loud what my like content creation rates are, because as a small business owner, you're like, wow, I wouldn't have that money to pay a content creator who came to me. Like I wouldn't be able to swing that,
Yeah.
So I'm coming at it from this very, like I have a lot of empathy and understanding on the business side for them of like what they need this to do. You need this to drive sales. Like you need this to drive awareness. And I can prove that not only through link clicks and tracking and stuff like that, but through the hundreds of comments that I get where people are like, oh my gosh, I bought Supercubes because of you, or they came in the mail today, or I'm so excited to start freezing my food. You've saved me so much time. You've saved me so much money. I screenshot every single one of those things.
Yeah.
Because those are all testimonials of like people's, like this is your influence over people. And I heard somebody say the other day on a podcast that if you're trying to figure out what is your scope of influence, like think about what your friends ask you for advice about. If you live in a really hot city and they're coming in from out of town, maybe you know all the best restaurants to eat at. You're a big foodie and like they're going to ask you for all those recommendations. Maybe you love fashion and you know new brands and they're always asking you, oh, where should I buy? I really need a new dress. Or there's always things that you have influence over people in your life. The things that they think about you for, those are the things that like, if you want to start creating content, you should create content around those things, because those are things you already have, you have a scope of influence around. I know that's probably not helpful to people as small business owners, but
I mean, you could look at it in terms of your business too. Like, what are people continuously asking you about? Like, what are your...
Right.
Like,
and that's how I know that my scope of influence on Simply Curated's account is over other candle makers, because people in my DM are constantly asking me, where did you get that pouring funnel? Or where do you get your packaging? Or where do you get,
And your D2C customer is not asking about a pouring funnel. They're like, cool.
That's the thing, right? Like what I need to do is put the Amazon storefront that I have for like Simply Sarah Hart. I need to make a candle makers section of that Amazon storefront. That's what I need to do.
There you go.
Because I'm like, look, just here, go get it there.
Yeah.
I am tired of
it coming soon.
telling you where it is.
Well, this was such an awesome conversation. I feel like you have such an incredible story, and that like through thread of where you started and how it's evolved for you continuously over the years. And like listening to it, it's just such a great reminder to just keep tapping into the things that like you inherently are good at, you inherently are drawn to, and that will just keep you on the path of like feeling fulfilled with what you're doing. So I really appreciate you sharing your story, and like I'm always cheering you on, and I'm so excited to see where this all goes for you, because I don't know, I just it's so exciting. Like you're the next Martha. You are Martha.
I don't think we should start saying that. I'm
saying it.
No. Okay. Honestly, I recently listened to Ina Garten's memoir.
And I'm listening to it right now. I'm obsessed with her.
It is so good. I've cried so much.
Cried, like sobs. And I'm like, I think there's outside influence making me cry too.
But it was so funny because I was listening to it in September as all of this was happening and like my account was blowing up. And like listening to her journey of like all this stuff, it was just like, sometimes your life has chapters. Just like with like closing the cocktail collection and getting rid of that, where people didn't understand why you would do that. You just never know. You have to trust your gut when it's right to like either, expand. She moved stores and then eventually, sell the store. There's so many different things. There's so many different chapters, and it's not over. And her story even isn't over yet. And it's just like, it was just so encouraging to me, right? But somebody who's like very talented, very multi-passionate, is good at a lot of things, but I think she loved the most was cooking and cooking for her friends and entertaining, and like then figuring out a way to share that with other people in one way or another. Like I just think is so interesting. And yes, both her story and Martha's story, minus some of the more recent years from Martha. Like I love her, but seriously, a little bit.
I really wish that like I had Ina's memoir
10 years
earlier
ago.
This year, or 10 years ago, but like really specifically for me earlier this year, as I was like navigating my own closure and like leaning into something I'm really passionate about, because it's just like such a good reminder of like leaning into that, and like your story is always evolving. It is such a good book. If you've not listened to it yet, like I might link that in the show notes. Like it is so good. And actually listen to it, because her voice.
Listen to it. It's like the best podcast. No shade to this podcast that you're listening to.
Please, no, it's fine.
Like it's great. You're gonna. There's a few books that I recommend as audiobooks. That's one of them. Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential as an audiobook.
Yes, audio.
I've re-listened to so many times. They're like rewatching movies for me. Like you're getting to spend time with this person and hear their stories in their voice, and it's just like. It's the best. I absolutely love business memoirs that are read by the author. Yeah. I used to really recommend Girl Boss, but again, we got into this. So I can't really do that anymore. Anyway, also was a good audiobook back in the day. Helped me out a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Everything, you know what? Everything exists for a reason in your life, and then that chapter is closed. Okay. So how can people find you on all the things if they're interested in cooking, if they're interested in candles, just want to get to know you, all the places?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, Simply Curated is my business account. We have a TikTok for it, but it's kind of been like mid, and we're not really been putting out. We should be better about that. But Simply Curated on Instagram, simplycurated.com is our website. We didn't even get to talk at all about this sister brand that I launched, which is totally fine because it's literally not feeling like it's going anywhere right now.
You never know.
But maybe another time. But anyway, that's like Hart & Co. Home on Instagram. We launched an Etsy for that, and you can shop both of those brands on our one Fair account on wholesale. So they're together on the Simply Curated Fair store. And I have this really great idea about the physical catalog I'm going to produce for both of these brands, but have not done yet. But I want to do it like one of those books we had as a kid where you flip it the other way, and then the back cover is like the other brand. And it's like two stories, but the same one.
I like
That's
this.
what I want to do. Anyway, you heard it here first. If I never make a physical catalog again, then I will still get credit for the idea. And then cooking and like lifestyle-ish light content is Simply Sarah Hart on Instagram and on TikTok, and also on YouTube, but just a little bit on YouTube. I'm trying not mostly with shorts right now, but eventually would like to do more longer form content on YouTube, because I love consuming that kind of content on YouTube. Yeah. So I think that anywhere you find yourself consuming a lot of content is a good platform to start creating content on. And then I also have a Substack for all the recipes and the things that I have not currently put behind a paywall. So get it.
Get in while it's hot.
Get all of the download, all the recipes.
I'll put everything linked in the show notes so you can just click and get access to them. Get all those recipes. They're so good. Thank you so much.
You're
this
welcome.
is awesome. You're the best.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you are loving the show, I would be so beyond grateful if you would rate and review the podcast and share it with one of your biz besties to help spread the word. I hope that you absolutely crush your sales this week. I'll be back to chat with you next Monday.